Hey, everybody. Welcome to the Raad Life. Today I have a special guest on, Dr. Deena Brown. She is, her wheelhouse is women empowerment. She has her own podcast, and she is doing some research about leadership in times of crisis and certain characteristics that are required. And I see she's on. So, Deena, welcome to the show.
It is such an honor to be here. Thank you for having me on the Raad Life.
I can hear you, my friend. Okay, here we go. The feed is now is on. You know, technology is grand. I love this thing about being able to do this stuff from wherever. But you know, every once in a while, the audio's in, the video's not. You know, it's time of crisis, Deena. How do we lead in times of crisis? I mean,
I know, I
technology.
almost just had a crisis. I was there sitting in the green room, and then I was gone. And I thought, how do you lead in time of crisis is that you don't stop. You actually become persistent. And so what you do, if it didn't work the very first time, then you
Yeah.
go back in and you do it again and you do it again. Because I help people get to, how do we get to yes? So I was going to be on the Raad Life, so I was getting in this room.
Well, we've talked about it for a while, so I'm glad that you're
Yeah.
here, right? But before we get into that, because you and I could probably banter back and forth forever, tell people a little bit about you. I said that your wheelhouse is kind of women empowerment, and you have different approaches that are unique to you, that how you go about it, and then right now that you're actually kind of also involved in this sort of like, you know, crisis leadership types through periods of crisis and certain characteristics that are sort of, I think, necessary in periods of crisis that under normal conditions maybe are not so important, right? So take a minute, tell people about yourself. And I said you have your own podcast that you've been doing for a couple of seasons. So go ahead, Mike's yours.
Well, what I do, and this is across the board, is that I inspire and empower women to transform their lives.
Okay.
I'm a strategist that help women who actually want more.
How long have you been doing this?
I've been doing this, well, I am 29 plus tax and gratuity minus the 6 divided by the 4, but I've been doing this for over 20 years. And particularly I founded the Leadhershift movement in 2017, particularly to address women and their mindset and how to help us shift and think differently. So focused solely on women and building that platform since 2017, but I've actually been inspiring and empowering and helping people transform their lives since I can remember. That's part of my DNA.
So you have a podcast, and I'm assuming that it's a guest-based podcast, right?
Absolutely.
All right. And so give me a little bit of like idea. Who have you interviewed? Like, I'm assuming a lot of women, and like it's industry leaders, artists. I mean, the reason why I'm asking this question is because I want to kind of like distill it down to: are there any common threads? Are there any common issues that people deal with? But yeah, who have you interviewed over?
I have interviewed celebrities. I've interviewed authors. I've interviewed CFOs, COOs, because not only prior to Walking Through Glass, my podcast, remember I did LA Talk Radio.
Yeah.
And so I've been doing this, like I said, for a while, but I have, again, attorneys. I have done, preachers, wives, women in leadership across the board, everything from entrepreneurs to enterprise level leaders that are women have actually been on my shows, and some that are amazing moms, some that are, really trying to navigate this thing called life, what I call walking through the glass. It's not so much breaking through the glass ceiling. It's about the glass we walk through, the fear, the shame, the imposter syndrome, the anxiety, all of that stuff, the negative self-talk. That's the glass that breaks. And so as women, there's a commonality that as we're walking through it, we are so hard on ourselves. And oftentimes we have a lot of bravado in front of everyone because we are supposed to figure it out. But inside, we're dying from the inside out. And if you ask me how I know, because I lived it. That's how. So I was my very first massive project when I realized I was literally physically dying from the inside out. And I have the medical bills to prove it, until I said, wait a minute, I got to make a shift. I got to make a change. And hence the shift factor.
Well, and I think it's common in that anybody who embraces a direction like this passionately, there's always a personal connection. Right. It never fails. I've been doing this show for 5 years, and I will tell you, when you hear it in people's voices, when you see the commitment in what they've been doing, what they're doing, and it's, it's tireless, and it's scary, and it requires a certain amount of personal courage, and brutal moral personal inventorying, and all of that stuff. When somebody is committed, whether it's senior care, whether it's teaching, whatever it is, it tends to have there's a personal connection, and so I like to think of myself almost like as a Paul Harvey, where I want the rest of the story, right? But I always want to go there, and so I didn't even need to prompt you. You went there.
Well, the book Testimony, The Journey of Me on the Road to I Am, was an anthology about the collection of stories. And even in that book that I published, and also was a contributing author, it included, again, a diverse group of women, from business owners to single moms to prior foster, children, to the whole 9 yards. And there is a common theme.
So what is the common theme?
Is that until we get to the core of what our I am story is, we continue to float in a sea, an abyss of obscurity. And that's in every area of our life, because you cannot separate your life from your leadership. Well,
and we're being challenged again, right? With the last 6 months. I mean, everything is probably being challenged. Your sense of self, your sense of self-esteem, the ways that you measured your value, all of that has been basically turned on its head, because if you're using societal measures as a benchmark against which you are measuring yourself, those are out the window. I mean, I use it as almost like a tongue-in-cheek about, like, it's not what happens, but in most cases when you run into somebody, the first question they go, "Oh, what do you do?" And the next question is, "Oh, what do you drive?" And right now, what you do and what you drive doesn't amount to anything. It's like, drive, what is that? There's a metal object in my garage that has tires on it, but I have not driven it for 5 months. Like the paradigm shift that we are experiencing right now is got to be putting a lot of strain on people in terms of their sense of self, right? That
right.
I am,
Right.
and as under normal conditions, people don't slow down long enough to figure out what the I am is, right?
Correct.
To have enough silence in their life that they can hear that inner voice. And now, everything that we know relevant to status, relevant to value, relevant to breadwinning. I mean, 40 million people out of work. It's got to be kind of a wild time right now for people to figure this out. However, at the same token, you got time. So you could take the time to actually...
You got time. Two things that you said when we're talking about VUCA, was what you were explaining: validity, uncertainty, complexity, and ambiguity. In those times, puts really great stressors on our lives, even in the best of situations, because that element of ambiguity and uncertainty is really where we struggle with. And if there's something that is not, what I call not aligned in our life, that's where you begin to see that tension of growth in times like these times of uncertainty. But one thing that you said that I wanted to really tap into is that you said that people have time now to be quiet. Here's the thing. Many people don't want to be quiet because they don't like what they hear about themselves and who they are and where they are. And they have to realize, in order to really thrive outwardly, you've got to begin to sow the right seeds inwardly. And so if they're quiet, they now have to listen to their own voice. And here's the thing, their voice has been the voice that's been telling them that they can't, that you're not good enough, and that no one's going to care about you, and no, you're not going to be able to achieve that. It wasn't the outside forces, it was themselves. So that's why some people are struggling right now inside, because they don't have the distractions. They've got to deal with themselves.
And that voice that you're talking about that's causing people to argue for their limitations is a voice that they are comfortable with because it's there, and that voice isn't working anymore. Because now there's no counterbalance to that voice, right? Under normal conditions, you're still doing, you're still achieving, you're still accomplishing, and then when you get to that edge of the precipice where it's a leap of faith, that inner voice comes in and says no, and argues for your limitations. But now that's the only thing that you're hearing, and there's no other side. You're not going to work 9 to 5. You're not having some of these little mini wins in your life, and so. And I will be the first to admit this. And I tell people this. I said, like, awareness is a scary business, right? Awareness is a scary business. When that light goes on, you go, aha, and there's that moment of euphoria, and you're warm and fuzzy under that light of awareness. and then it never turns off. And at some point you're like, my God, I wish ignorance was bliss right now. I wish I could turn the awareness light off, but you can't, that switch, you can't find that switch. Somebody took the switch away and basically drywalled over it. And now you are in a state of awareness. And that is a scary proposition. It requires personal courage, I think, to listen to those voices that are inside you and basically navigate your way through it. And sometimes we need help. Sometimes we can't do it ourselves, right? Sometimes we need somebody that's either a guide who's been through it before, or someone, you know, depending on what level of crisis you're dealing with, you may need professional guidance. It is interesting to me with the COVID that whatever these uncertainties are, whatever these self-doubts are that are going on, it's almost like it's a global experience now.
Yes.
Right. And in that there's a commonality and a bonding, right? It's not, one of the hardest things is for somebody to understand that you are not the only person going through this, because once you get to that awareness and understanding, there's relief in that, right? Mm-hmm. Right now, that possibility is on a global level. I've been saying to people that, you know, 4 years, 5 years down the road, we could be sitting at a little cafe in, I don't know, Lisbon, you know, and basically you look at the person next to you that you have no idea if they even speak your language or not. And let's just say, oh, you know, somehow you translate to them, you know, how was it for you during COVID-19? You have a bonding experience with that person that you've never met in your life halfway across the planet in an instant, right? That allows you to communicate. This time requires courage, right? What else does it require in terms of leadership?
Well, there's 3 things that I call, actually I developed, it's called my C3 blueprint. Okay. And it's actually 9 core C's, but when you think of C3, think exponentially. But the foundation to that, meaning that must exist across all areas. If you truly, truly want to thrive, you've got to have clarity. Okay. So that you can have confidence. Okay. And you can build consistent practices. Okay. And in all sense, courage, collaboration, and, you know, some other things, communication are part of that C dynamic. But at the very core, it starts with clarity. And that's the what. But the how is what I've created. The program is called the Shift Factor. And it's very interesting enough because shift is an acronym. The S in shift, I wonder if you can guess what the S in shift, where we have to start to be able to make those shifts, to be able to lead, to be able to thrive, to be able to really live by infinite design and infinite with infinite possibilities.
I'll tell you what my S is.
What is your S?
It's probably stillness.
Okay, yours is stillness, which comes with self-awareness. Self-awareness is the S in shift, in the shift factor. You've got to know who you are. 50% of knowing who you are is knowing who you're not. So you need to get clear so you can be confident and stay consistent. And so right now, what you're seeing across the leadership paradigm is that you're saying, like, wait a minute, I'm not really clear about who I am as an individual leader, or even what our corporate construct might be.
Or what I thought I am basically is. Yeah.
And you've had 2 massive pandemics simultaneously. Okay. And I say simultaneously because you've had COVID, but you've also had this racial social justice awakening that is like a pandemic for many people. I've been Black for 48 years, so this is not new to me. But for many people, our experience and what happens to us and the life that I've lived, even being in prominent positions and having power, and people see that I have these different opportunities, if you only knew what I also still went through and I still go through behind the scenes. But for many people, this was also like a pandemic. And now they have to decide, who am I in the midst of this uncertainty? Because now I'm even having to choose sometimes between what my family believes, what I've been taught, what's been ingrained in my very makeup, because we are products of our programming. And now I'm really struggling with who I am right now. So that's why you're seeing such validity across the leadership spectrum. And that now it's not just okay to have a corporate social responsibility program. You need a corporate social justice initiative, because now is the time that you're going to have to show up in spaces that you probably never had to show up before.
Well, to your point, one of the things that I totally, it's interesting for me because I end up finding myself in positions where a lot of people don't think I am Middle Eastern. they think I'm Italian or Greek.
Ah,
So I find myself in situations very often where I am privy to thought patterns, and they're not, you know, vicious or violent or anything, but just thought patterns that are a little bit out of sync. Okay, and I'm allowed to be kind of like privy to that, because if I was considered Middle Eastern, I don't think that I would basically be hearing
right.
those, right? But what's interesting about what you were saying, Deena, is that my who I am, relevant to where I stand on certain things, whether it's social justice or whether it's wear a mask, don't wear a mask, empathy for others, you know, protecting, you know, being, you know, wherever I stand. And these are all questions that are being put upon me. I mean, there are people probably that would say to you, oh my God, can I just get a break? Can I just not have to make these decisions right now? Because I'm like overloaded. And I totally get it, right? If you don't function, if your gear is not that in normal conditions, right now you're basically put in a situation where you have to question your patriotism, what that really means. You know, why is it not enough for me to be not to be a racist, but actually have to be pro equality, like actually have to stand for something versus only not be part of something that's negative, right? What are you in terms of part of something that's positive? You know, I mean, it blows my mind that in the middle of all of this, you know, something like, I don't know that it's really been given the importance that it is, right? We eliminated, NASCAR took away the Confederate flag. Okay, I mean, not in a million years would I have thought in the midst of all of this that somebody would actually do this. Now, whether you want to be jaded and say that it was based on money only or otherwise, right? But right now, who you are, it used to be, well, who are you in terms of what you want to do when you grow up? Who are you in terms of your career path? Who are you in terms of your role in your family? Now it's who are you in terms of your role in society and your role in your community and your role in the global community, right? Where do you stand on these large issues that you never even turned on the news, let alone to engage with, but now you are unable to avoid?
Right.
So with that, I would
Yes.
think clarity absolutely is important, but I would challenge that before you achieve clarity of who you are, you need to have the courage to even go there.
Yes, it depends on the framing and which order that you want to put it in. But here's how I would frame it:
I
is
mean,
that
assuming you're not pushed into that, right? Because
right,
sometimes you may find yourself pushed into that circumstance and you have no other option but to now embrace it and work through it. But I'm saying if you're just sitting comfortably in your armchair and you're figuring, okay, I've watched way too much YouTube and I don't know what else on Netflix I could keep occupying me. I've been doing it for 4 months, and I start looking at myself. My personal experience is it requires courage. You have to basically be willing to let go of what you know in order to explore what you don't.
I would agree. And here's the thing: courage is a part of that, because here's the question that I ask myself every day, and I ask my clients that I'm working with, I ask the room when I get on stage. I say, if you ask yourself this question, and it takes courage to answer it, and by answering it, you're going to get to clarity. So there is intersectionality here,
Right.
is what I wanted to point out to you.
Right. Yeah.
But I know that with clarity, when we talk about our end game, our products, what we're going to get. And so I ask this question: where is the lie in my life? And what am I willing to sacrifice
Mm-hmm.
to know the truth and to even live the truth?
Mm-hmm.
And then with everything begin to happen, I've been asking that for a while. And I started to say to a few individuals, we were having conversations, and I said, what if your truth is really a lie?
Mm-hmm.
How are you going to process that? Because people say, well, if it's my truth, it's my truth, it has to be real. Okay, again, but what if the truth, because we create that truth for ourselves.
So give me an example, because you've worked with people, you've interviewed people. Give me an example of a truth being a lie.
A truth being a lie. For instance, I've had one particular, client who was dealing with she's an entrepreneur, and she was saying that really the way that she sets up, her business is totally inclusive. I love everybody. I have, everybody, and I'm so open-minded about all of these various things, because I kind of grew up in this particular dynamic and we loved everybody.
Okay.
And so she even made the statement, I don't see, this is the infamous statement, no one that I know should make this anymore, and I don't see color with anyone. Okay. So then when we were going back, because she wanted to revamp her business, and she said, I wanted to, when everything happened, she wanted to make sure she was authentic. So I said, let's go look at the decisions that you've made and who you select services and products from. Let's look at the prior coaches and where do you get your information from?
Mm-hmm.
And so when she began to share her info, where she got it from, she realized it was skewed. I said, okay, you don't see color, but let's look at everyone who's a part of your team. Let's look at everyone that you've done business with. Let's go look at all of it. What do you see? Well, every single person almost looked exactly like her. And I don't just mean because she was white. I meant you take the haircut, I mean, you take everything. And I said, it has become so normalized to you to see this, that this is your normal. And so when you're saying, I don't see any diversity, I don't even see anything else, is that, are you truly blind to it? Or you've just become normalized to it? And so when that truth being a lie, it doesn't have to be something like, oh, you stole something and you're lying about it. But it's like when you've been talking to yourself and creating that narrative with yourself.
Right.
And I had actually I got an email this morning. One of my great friends, she's been doing this work and she's beginning to have these conversations. And one thing that she said, I'm so angry. Sometimes don't even want to be white sometimes because I can't believe these people think like this. And she was like, I kind of get tired. And then I read a post like what you say is that I don't get an opportunity to be tired. I'm going to be black tomorrow, day after. And here's what she said. When she kept saying that she didn't want to be white anymore, so she said she had a quick thought that said, and she asked herself, she's amazing. She said, well, would I want to change my skin color to be black? And she said immediately she realized, oh God, no. There's your truth being a lie. But she has the courage to have those conversations, and we have safe conversations with us. And so what I've been able to do is cultivate a very safe place to have these conversations with those people in my circle. Why? Because they're my family. Doesn't matter if you're white, black, Puerto Rican, and Haitian. I have them all in my family. And if we're connected, we are family. And let me help you understand. No, it's not my job to teach you, but I'd rather you come and have a safe conversation with me about areas where you don't feel as safe or strong, and have a conversation with me. And I'm going to be honest with you. And we have relationship and we have trust. And so when I began to ask those questions, I've had people cry because they had, and I said, now be quiet. Go sit somewhere and be quiet and listen to what happens in the dialogue. Go identify those moments when you actually look the other way. Go identify the things that your silence. I don't believe personally that silence is compliance. I don't believe it in that construct. Because silence may be processing. And this is a marathon. And there's a place when we pass the baton for each person. So you've got to get quiet and be courageous so you can be clear about when you're supposed to pick up the baton that's related to your gifts. That's related to what you can do for the long game. I'm really not impressed with you changing your banner to black and having a bumper sticker. What are you going to do to deal with institutionalized racism?
Well, to the point, NASCAR drops the Confederate flag, but what's the consistency look like? And those are answers only that come with time. Like you don't really know, right? So you're correct, because we also live in an instantaneous society. It's like where our expectations is that everything is going to be remedied right away. That's the only way that that. That's not sustainable. That's not sustainable, right? And that's never sustainable. That's a reaction to something. That's not a decision made based on clarity and then persistence and basic consistency. Yeah, it's fascinating to me that most people, the word normalize is a very good one, because I think that's what happens, right? And in some cases, in most cases actually, we normalize because we have to. Like if we don't normalize, that we are constantly in a state of flux in terms of where we stand on something. So I totally get that. But in the course of normalizing, then also eliminating the fact that you should re-examine and reevaluate, that's too much of a price to pay for normalization. And I think that's where the system breaks down. It's like, normalize all you want. That's fine. I totally get it. You need to normalize in order to have some sort of a sense of control and consistency in your life. So you can plan. I need to normalize that this is the reality of my life, so I can plan for tomorrow. I can plan for what happens the day after. Get it. But when you stop reevaluating and looking and double checking and making sure that it's still okay, and we're thinking, two things happen. I think you miss an opportunity to grow.
Absolutely.
Right. And you also miss an opportunity to, by growing and understanding, enhancing and improving your life and those around you.
Absolutely.
So
It's not just normalizing, and it's anesthetizing. So it's almost you're putting anesthesia and putting it to
well,
sleep.
that is what you're doing.
Yeah,
That is
that
what you're
is,
doing.
and I start saying, you know, for some of us, we put some anesthesia on it, but what anesthesia does is it wears off.
Right.
And so what happens when it wears off? And now you do have to feel again. I think that's where people are struggling. And I'll give you this when we talk about how it's just become part of what we say. And again, we are part of our programming, what we've been saying to ourselves and hearing. But one of my favorite shows had always been Chicago PD. Okay. I love cop shows. I love detective shows. I love that. And so when everything was happening, I have a hard time watching the show now, to be honest with you.
Why?
Because as I begin to dissect what I have been internalizing from the show, I'm not saying it's not a good show. I know they're changing some things up, but I go back to how many nights, my sister and I had this conversation because she loves the show too. And what we see, what these cops do inside of these inner cities and how they treat. And this is not just with Chicago PD. You could go back to Hill Street Blues. You could go back to, you can go back to all of them. And, you know, Kojak, everything I've always loved. And I said, did I just kind of become so used to seeing cops treat poor people?
Yeah, it becomes accepted.
It's accepted. Yeah.
Well, that's when I say normalize, that's what I mean. And
that's right.
And that's, I get it. I understand, right? There's a reason why we find ourselves in that position. I actually do not believe, I'm one of those people that really does not believe that once you have more than two people involved in anything, that you can ever consistently maintain a conspiracy or any kind of, like, you know, plan or whatever. Like I actually think if you have more than two people, and even with two people, it's almost impossible to keep a secret, right? So so I don't fathom that whole bullshit about conspiracies and all that crap, right? But I think societal pressures, just needing to basically get through your day and onto your next, there are certain things that get normalized.
Yes.
And I'm not even ready to basically lay a blame or point a finger or anything like that. I think the problem is that when we stop actually reevaluating, examining, looking at it, but like we just started, you know, with this kind of interesting, this conversation is coming full circle. It's that whole courage about looking internally, right?
Yes.
So if you can't look internally at yourself, okay, you're not going to look at issues and societal issues such as equality, race relations, you know, inner city, you know, income equality, rent
you
control.
Can wear a mask. I mean,
wearing a mask, for God's sake. When the heck did wearing a mask? You know what? I mean, I've got a pink one. I'm going to put a pink one on.
Oh, yes.
You know, wearing a mask. Okay, when is wearing a mask an issue, right? I'm like, give me a friggin' break, right? I mean, we have weaponized and politicized everything. And by the way, I'm not taking any side of this equation off the blame of doing this, like of weaponizing, polarizing, tribalizing, whatever it is. But the point is, it doesn't help anything. It really doesn't help anything. And it starts with if you're a person that can take this time that we're going through right now, in the midst of the adversity and the tension that's going on, find a place of peace within yourself to be able to look at yourself. Okay. That can now ripple effect beyond yourself. It can ripple effect as a benefit to your immediate family, because in the midst of this turbulence, there is a calm place for them. There is a guiding hand, if you will, that's saying, you know, there's an alternative to be panicked. You know, we're all in this together. Seems like a cliche, but it's true. And then you can take that outside your house. You take that to your neighbor. You take that to your community, right? And we can come out of this thing with a little bit of better from when we came into it, because I don't think we're going to come out the same. That's a given. The question is how we're going to come out. And, you know, kind of bringing the conversation back to that sort of leadership that is needed. Another couple of C's for you, like I said, courageous. Okay.
Definitely.
Okay. Courageous, uncurated, like actually daring to be authentic enough to not have to basically package everything from what you say, what comes out of your mouth, from reacting to something, from, you know, just being authentic. I mean, God, what are we telling people? This is like the scariest friggin' podcast they've ever heard, right? Courageous, authentic. I'm like, God, no, I don't want to do
Some
this.
people are and leaders, and I'll speak from a leadership framework, and we talk about the future. You know, I'm a futurist. Is that the future is not for those who can be flexible, and they're not for people who say I can change. The future is about creatives. What can you create out of what you're done with? Because you actually, it's not about change. I'm not looking for change. I'm looking for transformation.
Right.
Not a different way of doing things, but a new way of being. And that takes you creating and transmuting, you know, what you have, or alchemizing all your experiences, whatever words you say, to kind of create a potion and make something new. And so that you actually lead, because this season that we're in is not a new type of season. It's just another season.
It's just accelerated, maybe
just
by
accelerated
a common experience.
Technology. But also I think technology plays a role in this whole concept of digital transformation and digital influence, and having global impact, like you said, and bringing us closer to really see in real time what we're dealing with, as opposed to, you know, waiting to get the mail or the postcard or to see it, whatever. It's instantaneous. You have everyone who's a broadcaster now because they have a smartphone. Right. You have the news happening in real time. You have all of those things. And so when people are now thinking about how our lives have changed, think about the person who was alive the very first time. I mean, this is what she just died. I can't think of her name. I didn't know we were going to talk about this. I would have wrote it down. To see planes take flight. Mm-hmm. I mean, that had to be mind blowing. Mm-hmm. That you literally can travel from this place to this place. You know, my life is different. So how did it impact mail? I mean, we think about the common examples between Netflix and Blockbuster. Mm-hmm. You know, between Kodak
and that was and that was in our lifetime. Imagine if you bought a house. I mean, I know a friend of mine who bought a house years ago in the Los Flores, I think it's a neighborhood in Santa Ana. It's old homes, 1930s, 1940s, right? There was a niche in the kitchen where the phone sat. Okay, my grandmother's house in Baghdad, there was a shelf in the entry where the big, bulky, black-handled, you know, dial, it was literally about this big, right? The dial was this big, right?
The rotary phone, and if you messed up, you had to start over.
The dial was bigger than my phone, right? And right, and then you worried about
because if you messed up, you had to start all over again.
Right. So imagine somebody that actually there was one. They happened to be the house that had that phone on the street. To live from then to where they have a smartphone in their pocket, right? I mean, there's no wires.
It's a computer. Your smartphone is a computer in your pocket.
Right.
So if you have an Apple Watch, it's a computer on your wrist.
So again, we're talking about being honest with yourself. We're talking about that courage to look inwards. That really all starts with that, right? Yeah. I want to shift the conversation to that imposter.
Oh yeah.
Okay. So tell me about the imposter. Tell me about the imposter.
Well, the imposter, I call it an imposter bully, but over 70% of people at one point in their time, according to the latest research or the last major research study until mine comes up, 70% of people, men and women, identify as experienced at some point imposter syndrome. And it's that feeling like, you know, even though you maybe had success, you've accomplished different things, is that somehow you're going to be found out to be a fraud. And that you believe that you're not, you know, talented enough, you know, knowledgeable enough, etc. No matter the fact that you actually have receipts to show that you've done these things. Mm-hmm. And so when you walk in a room, and personally, I believe like the way that it was explained and the way that the initial study was done, great study, but there's still a gap in there. And so that's why I spend time now focusing on that. Number one, it didn't really include women of color or Black women in those studies. And when we talk about the imposter critic, the imposter bully, I think we need to reframe it, because I don't believe it's as much that some people do. It's you believing that you that you're not good enough. You are concerned about what other people believe you can do, not yourself. You think that they don't know, because you'll say, I got this, I know this information,
Right.
but what are they going to think? And so we're so caught up in they.
Yeah,
And
that makes a lot of sense. So their expectations is
yes,
what you're measuring yourself by, and in doing
yes.
so, you are worried about being found out to be a fraud, plus probably your own sense of accomplishments you have not actually honored.
Or they're going to think you don't know what you're talking about because you might not know. And so the reason why my particular research deals with particularly Black women and other minority ethnic groups is because, like I said, we're part of our programming. What
Right.
have we been hearing most of our lives? And I don't mean just from outside forces. What about inside the home? You've been told what you can and can't do. So when you start to look at that, and I'm looking at it from a perspective of there is intersectionality with race, class, and trauma.
Yeah,
So
for
people who
sure.
experience trauma are going to have those feelings greater. And that trauma is not just general trauma, oh, I bumped my head. It's actually tied to what I call toxic shame.
Right.
And so toxic shame, not all shame is created equal, because with toxic shame, again, your brain is always recording. It always has been recording. And that little amygdala, that little thing in the back, that little critic that holds all these factors, it is there to protect you, but also to kind of warn you. But also, if you are not aware, you talk about that awareness space, about what your triggers are, it can actually stifle you because of the conversations of don't do that. Remember, you got hurt. And if this is the way your brain works, I love neuroscience, the way your brain works. Why? And this is a comment. I don't know any household across generations that people didn't hear, okay, touch that stove if you want to. You touch it once, you want to touch it again.
Right.
Why? Because you're going to learn if you touch it, it's hot.
Right.
You're going to burn yourself, and that means you're not going to do it again. But what if we now amplify that across our life? If something hurt you, something you stood up and
you won't do it, you're not
going to do it again, right? And so unless you have you have the courage, or you have some other dialogue, or you're aware of where that trigger comes from, you're going to amplify that across your life and experiences.
Well, and then let's just kind of close that particular example. It's like, okay, I touched the stove, I burned myself, I'm not going to do it again, right? But the reality of life, using that particular example, and if we apply that to amplify it, is that I learned that if I touch the stove, I will burn my hand. So I won't touch the stove, but it doesn't mean that I won't use the stove. I've learned from burning my hand, but I have not.
Well, why don't I get a mitt? I will now use a new tool. I'll get a hand mitt, an oven mitt, and touch the stove.
And that's it, right? So if you amplify that, okay,
yes.
the burning of the hand did not stop the person using the stove. They just learned better ways to use the stove. And if you
wrap that back to leadership, right? You talk about how are we leading in these times of uncertainty?
Right.
Well, you've tried this, it doesn't work.
Right.
So guess what you get to do? You go back and you do something different this time. You go back and you keep trying until you find what actually works and connects and resonates.
Well, and the beauty of this too, I mean, I've been saying this kind of tongue in cheek for the last few months, but it actually comes with a certain freedom.
Yes.
And that is when somebody says, what am I supposed to do? And I'm like, well, it's my first pandemic. How about you? Right. I mean, like I don't have a game book basically based on pandemics. This is my first pandemic, right?
Pandemic.
It's my first pandemic. How about you? But the thing about that is that because it's my first pandemic, I'm also not saddled with things that basically are learned behaviors. I can choose to look at this as being a brand new territory. I have no rules that don't apply. And I can basically take the skills and the seasoning that I have developed and apply it towards this unknown. And again, it brings that conversation back to this, in my mind. The fear and the worry and the hesitation and the sense of fraud and all of that stuff really stems from my perspective in how you deal with the unknown.
Right.
How you deal with the unknown. Do you deal with the unknown as something that it is a base for fear, or do you deal with the unknown as something that is a place of curiosity, exploration, and developing from there, like learning, right? I mean, it's fascinating. Take any topic, whether we're talking about societal issues, where we're talking
Yeah.
about personal growth issues. We face this fear. That moment of fear is that, and it really stems from an unknown, whether it's an unknown of the person, an unknown of you know, cultural habits, an unknown of a language, an unknown of an area of expertise. I don't know how to do a funnel campaign. I mean, all of it, right? It doesn't really matter. It comes down to this. And at that moment of truth, at that crossroads, we have an option. We have a choice. It is a choice of whether you get paralyzed by the fear or you basically get excited by the curiosity.
Yes, but that lends itself to when we talk about universal laws, one of being the law of polarity. If there is an unknown, there's a known.
Yes.
So you've got to have to understand that if it's an unknown, there is a known, there is an answer, there is a solution. If there's a problem, there is a solution. The path and the journey you take to get to that solution is really going to differ based upon how you personally talk about that imposter piece, about where you see your talents, your gifts, and your ability, which is also tied into your prior experiences and your knowledge. And if you are not aware or self-aware, or if you've been able to sit in stillness. And so that's why with the shift factor, the S is about self-awareness. Because
without that, you don't have a foundation.
You don't have a foundation, because when you're self-aware, the H in the shift factor is humility. Mm-hmm. Humility is a sign of strength. It's a sign of courage. Mm-hmm. It's saying, I don't have the answer, but I know there is an answer, and I'm going to connect to the answer.
And I'm okay with not knowing the answer.
And I'm okay with not knowing, because I know someone that knows it, or I know where to go get. I'm still fully equipped.
Well, and I'm actually not only, I think it also means I'm not only okay with the answer, I'm okay or not knowing the answer. Right. I'm okay with people knowing that I don't know the answer.
Absolutely. Because we are part of this same oneness. That's that collaborative piece. That's that collective efficacy, that collective empowerment. So we talk about what our leaders are going to need. And I know we started out with that. One of them, they're going to have to be able to utilize their influence to develop a sense of collective empowerment.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And so to hand off to people that know it and that they don't.
So let's talk about this event that you have coming up, because I think that speaks to that too, right? So tell me about this event happening in August.
I am really excited about FutureCast. This is the first of its kind. I know some people think of FutureCast and think about the weather person. They say, here's what our weather's going to be like. Well, how often do we do that with our lives, with our own personal development and our own personal growth? And so FutureCast for women, as it says FutureCast for women, is that for us to sit down and think about what our life looks like. And the theme this year is called Dare to Dream. Mm-hmm. Because we've stopped dreaming, get so caught up in what everybody else needs and wants from us individually. And this, the research shows a lot that women tend to not, really take care of themselves. They're usually focusing on what other people. And so what FutureCast is an amazing collection of women, and two young women are talking about what their dreams and how they begin to see the future, and talk about some strategies. So not only encourage you to dare to dream bigger, to actually identify and learn to mitigate the risk, but to really begin to create a strategy for your own personal development and growth. And I'll ask you, do you have a strategic plan for your growth?
I don't have a fixed strategic plan for my growth. I tend to be nonlinear in that way. Mm-hmm. I tend to allow my curiosity to drive that. But when I look back, I realize that there's a connectivity between my growth.
I was going to say, even you saying that is part of your plan, because I know you well enough that you are always seeking, to learn new things. That still is a plan. So the plan doesn't have to look like my plan. That's the beauty of FutureCast. Is you creating the best plan for your life. I would say
that the driving engine, if I had to really kind of distill it between conscious awareness and just kind of reflecting back and on and thinking, well, that's interesting how these things connect. I would say that my plan has always been, continues to be, a hunger for curiosity and to do things that not for a challenge for other people. In fact, it's really funny because I look back and I go, probably got into a lot of trouble not doing what other people wanted me to do. Right? And
Look
I
at
don't.
you now, successful.
Well, it's just you know what, I'm having fun, and irrelevant to success. I think it's how you measure it. It's
Yeah.
how
I
you
think about
define.
significance. Yeah.
Literally how you the terminology you use to measure success, to measure satisfaction, to measure fulfillment. It's as individual as anybody, right? And I think curiosity, not to where it is reckless, but curiosity that also comes with a depth of knowledge and gained knowledge, I think has always been sort of the plan.
Mm-hmm.
So where that road takes me, I actually in many cases don't want to know, because it's, and I use the example of a captain often because it kind of, for me, it captures it. And it's not somebody I was talking to kind of started me down this path. A captain leaves the harbor on a ship, navigating maybe the same causeway, the same ocean that they've done 100 times, right? They know full well, though, that every time they take off, that journey is never going to be the same as any other journey they've had. And they don't know what's coming. They don't know what's coming around the horizon, right? So the only thing they know is that they have the skills to navigate the waters regardless what the conditions are, even though it may be a path or a route that they have done a million times, right? So for me, if you approach life from that perspective, then you are walking with confidence, knowing that whatever comes your way, not you will conquer, but you will navigate.
And that's exactly what Future Cast is. Again, I love that you shared that because, again, when you look at the research, men tend to do that very well. And women tend to have it skewed a little bit, primarily because of what our roles usually are.
Right.
And again, this is not 100% across the board, so I don't want to, indicate that. But if you look at the commonality and you look at what the research says, or if you just went and interviewed 10 women, they would pretty much say pretty much the same thing. But what I love about what you said, and really hits home my point, is that the big goal, the big why that I have is the same. How the plan may change based on that. But what I really love what you said, and what Future Cast is about, is giving you the tools to navigate.
Yep.
The tools to navigate this, which is why I said we talk about how do we mitigate risk? How do we I even identify that there is alignment there? How do we begin to set ourselves up so that whatever comes in our path and on our journey, we can navigate that to live the life that we personally dream and desire, and live it by design instead of by default. Oh, I just got to take it because. No, you don't. You can design your life, and then here's some tools for you to get there. Now, the timing, because what the law of gender says, you can't say, oh, it's going to happen exactly in 3 months. And, you can try with certain business objectives, but not really. Some of that evolves because, again, there's other factors that are in there that needs to kind of work within that. But I think that for women, it's been a challenge. And I can say and speak for myself that when I began to set things up, and as a mom, my son's calendar would go on my calendar first.
Right.
I mapped around everything. And then when I was, married and stuff, it was, it went there. So if someone came and said, what do you want to do? I really don't really know right now, because I'm thinking I'm here. And that is even when I worked full time as a school principal. I'll
share with you an example of that is very close to home here, right? My mom basically made contingent. My mom was the kind of person that made contingency plans for contingency plans. Okay, right? And it was everybody first. I mean, the lady at CVS, the gardener, the whatever, everybody first, right? This woman made plans for contingency plans. Okay, she looked at things from a worst case scenario perspective, never losing the hope factor or her faith, but she explored them so that she would never be surprised. Okay,
right.
And she planned for plans. Right. So here we are. She has had cancer for 2 years, stage 4 cancer for 2 years.
Wow.
She's sustaining. She's fine, but she's still continuing to give to everybody first. She passes away. We go to try to basically pick up this slack and do certain things, right? The woman that made contingency plans for contingency plans, who had been suffering at stage 4 cancer for 2 years, never made plans for her own plot or her own service. That is, to me, exactly what you're talking about. Women are basically, it's always, and again, we're generalizing, I get it, right? But it's always about the other people around, the other people in life. When I'm done with that, if I have any left, I give to myself. And the same applies for women as to men, as to anybody regardless of gender. If you don't have, or you don't make sure that people can get the best that you have to offer, they only will get what is left over.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And so what I
you gotta give to yourself. You gotta make yourself a priority
up first. Right. And so what's inside of our cup, what's inside the cup is for me. But in the past, we've been giving ourselves the grounds. What's inside is for me. Mm-hmm. We should be serving from our overflow. But what we've done is that we've given everything, so we have no fuel for ourselves.
Right.
To even be able to produce, to be able to make an overflow. But I began to, that's part of what the Leadhershift movement is about, shifting the way we think about ourselves as women and our roles, and how we learn, experience, apply, and develop, how we lead. And it first starts with beginning to pour into ourselves so we can serve from our overflow, as opposed to, I had to become the best version of me because my son needed me to be the best version of me.
No, I actually really like that. I've never heard it put that way, as far as, serving from the overflow, but it actually makes a lot of sense. And yes, you're going to have to fight the demons of selfish and the demons of, it's not all about you.
Programming. That's the programming as women that we've had, which is why I said mindset mastery and really beginning to deal with that. So when we talk about that imposter bully and that inner critic, that I begin to pull together and say, why don't we reframe this? Is it truly imposter syndrome?
Yeah.
Or is it part and parcel to certain tape that we've had based upon these other factors?
Well, it's a combination of all of it.
And it's a spectrum. The same way we have the autistic spectrum, I believe that we have a spectrum. And I believe that certain individuals who have certain, mental, opportunities to expand in that other area, they probably suffer from imposter syndrome. I mean, to the nth degree. But I think that 70% number is really high. Mm-hmm. And I think that there's a lot of room for the spectrum to say, people have just been using it like willy-nilly. I have imposter syndrome. So I'll ask them. And this is where my research and why I started to say, let me talk about this. I go, okay, so what do you mean by that? And when they would describe it to me, I'd say, is that masking or is that imposter syndrome?
Right, because it could be masking.
Is it this or is it imposter syndrome? And then I'd say, well, did this happen to you or when you were younger? And they would say yes. And I said, so, and I would have powerhouse women. And so I'd say, so you don't really know this information. Oh, I know this information. Oh, but imposter syndrome says that you don't believe you know. Are you really talking about imposter syndrome? Or are you talking about inner critic, bully, based on some tape? Right. And some experiences. Right. And so that's why I'm excited about having the dialogue. That's why I'm excited about FutureCast. That's why I'm excited about really being the strategist to really help women who want more. And that's why the Leadhershift movement is there, is to help you make that shift, to shifting the way you think about yourselves and how you learn, experience, apply, and develop, because that's going to have greater impact.
How do people find out about this event in August? I mean, the dates are right behind me there. It's August 1st.
Are right behind you.
It's a week. I'm assuming, given the reality of what we're dealing with these days, that it's a virtual summit.
It is absolutely virtual. And that comes from the fact that I have to shift from my live event that I had in October and some other events that got canceled. And I said, but what can I do? And so you can go to bit.ly, capital F, UTUREHERCAST 2020, bit.ly FutureCast 2020, and you can go to that particular site. If you probably Googled it,
Well,
You
we'll also include
yeah,
when we post this interview, I'll include it in the text too. But
yeah.
what do people need to do? Is there like a registration form?
There is. When they go to the site, it's a summit site, it's an amazing site. They go to the site and there's a couple of options. Number one, it's free. You can pick up to 6 of the talks. There's over 30 lessons and talks that are there, and you can pick up to 6 for free. There's about 4 to 5 that are released each day over that. Each one comes with an action plan.
Mm-hmm.
Or what I strongly recommend, because the content is so good and each talk and each lesson and each takeaway is amazing, is to get the all access pass, which is $47. And you get a playbook to go with it. Plus you get up to 90 days to go back to the talks.
And you've got 4 sessions being released every day
over the 7 days
over the course of the week.
Over the course of the week, so you can go pick.
So that's a lot of content.
It's a lot. When I tell you, it's an extraordinary amount of content to do that. And so that's an all access pass. And I just really, I made it to the point as affordable as possible. Right. But really the other part behind it, which is I'm really excited, is that I've created the Dare to Dream Scholarship. So all proceeds from FutureCast go to the Dare to Dream Scholarship for Women. And so we want to help women begin to dream bigger and bolder. And we want to partner with them by saying, what is that dream that you have? Mm-hmm. And how can we lend ourselves and add a financial added to that? And this doesn't mean you want to start a business. You can say, I wanted to go to a fancy dinner and get dolled up and, have some bespoke, tailoring done. And I want to go out, and I've never done that because I've always put everybody else first. Mm-hmm. And so you can apply for that. There's a written piece. And so that information will come out once we finish with pulling the rest of FutureCast together. But that's why there's a cost piece to that, because I knew that I wanted to give back. And I was going to donate to certain other philanthropic things I've done before. But my big, bold dream was always to have a scholarship for women that had the least amount of parameters possible with the greatest gain. Mm-hmm. I want you to dream. I want you to think about yourself. And it has to be for you. You cannot say, I want to get that for myself. Nope. This is making self-care sexy. Mm-hmm. If you want to get your nails done at a fancy salon, okay, apply for that Dare to Dream scholarship. If you want to go take it, we'll see what happens with trips. And the goal with this is that over time is that I'll then have partners who will partner with us to help these dreams come true. So if we paid the airfare, then maybe this hotel might give a room for the weekend, and this barbershop might. So I knew that this is the start of something bigger than me. And all the women that said yes, they said yes to my big, bold dream to do something bigger than me. And that's part of where we're at right now in this post-COVID world. There's nothing that we can really do that's big, do by ourselves. If your dream is something that you can do by yourself, it's not big enough.
Right. And I think that's sort of part of that opportunity I'm talking about, like right now that we are experiencing. If we can get our heads around the fact that this is not just a challenge, it's actually an opportunity right now that we're going through, then there's lack of restrictions of what and how we can combine our efforts, right? We're sitting here in 2 different places, having an interview over a topic about a virtual summit that,
for women around the world.
A year ago, it would have required finding a location, paying to hold the space.
Or our thoughts. You know what? We could have done it, but our thought processes, we would have thought we had to have been in the same. We wouldn't have considered the plausibility and the feasibility of doing it this way, because we would have said, oh, I have to do it this way. Why? Because it's been done like that before. And now when that was taken away, you're like, wow, there's women from Canada, Luxembourg, India, all over the globe who said yes and who's on FutureCast.
Oh, yeah,
in different states. It's crazy.
I'm an ambassador. I couldn't do it this year because of what was going on with my family, but I'm an ambassador for Global Wellness Day. It's an event that was organized by a lady in Turkey who had some personal issues health-wise and realized that, she wanted to do something. And basically the premise of Global Wellness Day is that one day can change your life, right? And it's like a manifesto about 10 things to do drink water, sleep well, whatever. And then the day basically, now there's over 32 countries with ambassadors in them. So usually what happens during the course of that one day, literally in June, is that people put the activities together and they send them in and all this stuff, right? So there's this sort of this things happening all over the world. It may be at a business, it may be at a fitness business, it may be at a spa, it may be, kids in inner school, whatever, inner city, whatever it is.
Right.
This year, because of the challenge of this, because we could not get into physical locations to do anything, they literally had a 24-hour live stream from all parts of the world.
Wow.
Via Zoom, not even a major media conglomerate with international outreach. They basically did this thing where they had people literally piggybacking off each other on a one feed. It was almost like a Jerry Lewis, kind of event where it was just ongoing. Here we are, here we are, here we are, we're here. And it was done by people themselves. They did not require a large infrastructure, did not require a huge outlay of money. So what we're going through right now, okay, at the first, and this is not unusual, by the way, for human growth, right?
Oh.
We are challenged, we have an issue, we have a catastrophe, we have something that brings us together. And in the course of doing that, we are offered an opportunity to be freed, literally, from the restrictions of what we had basically put up on ourselves, restrictions that either society had put on us, or we put on ourselves, or our programming has put on us. And here we find ourselves with literally a blank canvas. We are armed with what we know. We are armed with the seasoning that we bring to this, right? And
it belongs to the creatives. I keep telling you, and even still, here's the challenge, and this is what I found, which is why I knew that Futurecast and the timing was right, is that I still would encounter women and groups, men and women, even companies, who wanted to talk about what they can't do instead of what they could do, and how to alchemize the opportunity to do something greater. And that's why I knew I was onto something. And I said, but if you choose to dare to dream, if you can see something bigger for yourself, you've opened up the expansiveness for you can see something bigger and a bigger value add, even globally or even institutionally, for yourselves. But when they say those things, I know it starts with them. It's what's going on the inside, as opposed, and this really manifesting on the outside. So that's why I love when you share it. You've got to kind of go back and start with yourself. There's so many opportunities to be able to touch lives, and to do so relative, because here's the thing, if you have a computer, then you can do it, because there's a free version of Zoom, there's a free version of Facebook, if you have a phone, you can do it. And so I believe that it's the programming where we have to do the work. And that's where I'm committed to doing the work with women, to begin to break that and help them reframe and re-script their narrative on their terms. Yeah,
no,
that's the core of what I love to do.
So I'm gonna just share another story with you because it's relevant to Dare to Dream. Okay, I remember being on a business trip and going through Heathrow Airport, and I was in a taxi and I was going to into town, and I happened to see on the side of a brick wall, somebody had written "Dare to Dream."
Wow.
I don't know whether there was more to it or not, but that was the part that I basically got. And I actually wrote it down. I remember pulling out my little folio and I wrote it down, and I can't find it after that. Right? And I wrote it down and never found it. Right. So it's like, they write things down, you won't forget them. I wrote it down and I never forgot it, but I don't know where that folio is. But here's what and this is years ago. This is probably easily 15, 20 years ago. So I will tell you though, that when I wrote it down, instinctively I knew what I was writing down, but afterwards, when I remembered it for the longest time, the focus in my memory, the focus that I was holding on to was the dream word. When in fact, what was appealing to me and what is now even more appealing to me is not the dream, it's the dare.
Yes.
Right? And so that's when I say it's the courage. Like you have to have the courage. Actually, not have, even more. You have to allow yourself the courage to dare. because and I'll give you a,
Comes with self-awareness.
well, and down and along the way, like I said, along the way, I look back and there's moments, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I was given an opportunity one time to work on a project, and it was a gentleman who basically had curated his father's artwork, and his father was a ceramicist and a painter, and he was trying to basically develop a line of products that he could sell through the spa industry. And then when we started talking, there seemed to be a lot more depth to his father and this collection, and what his father kind of stood for. And I said, you don't really actually have, you should be developing a philosophy. Like this is more than just a product line. The product line could very well be a monetized version of this, but there's an overarching philosophy involved in this, right? And one of the things that he shared with me, again, I don't think he had an intention of, like, it wasn't a leading share. He just shared something with me, and it was the old mythological story of Icarus. Right, and here was a painting of Icarus falling, which is the normal, right? And the perfect analogy for what we're talking about. Icarus dared to fly too close to the sun, and the story is usually used as a reference of what? Don't fly too close to the sun, because the sun will melt the wax on your wings, and you will fall you'll meet your demise. Interestingly enough, okay, when his father put this, and it was part of a series, okay, it wasn't titled The Fall of Icarus. It was titled The Flight of Icarus.
Oh, I love it.
Right. So again, and this is when we're talking about this, even him, the son, was looking at this as being a story of limitations. Yeah. I looked at it as a story championing and celebrating daring.
Yeah.
Right. So again, our own internal programming, the first thing is that's that step. And so anybody who's listening, please check out this event coming up in August. And I use that as, it's as simple as that. It's like dare to dream, but it's not the dream. If you don't dare, there is no dream.
Absolutely. Oh, that's so good. Absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely.
So I dare to basically say goodbye to you, my friend, because otherwise I'm going to have to basically edit the heck out of this episode, right? And I know you and I can talk for hours, but not seriously. It's a great conversation. I think it's very appropriate given the time that we're going through right now, because it's scary. I'll be the first one to admit that for anybody. It's tumultuous. It is unknown around every corner. Am I going to put my kids in school for distance learning? Am I going to basically have to send them to school with a mask? Maybe I cannot send them to school with a mask. I totally get it. I really do. But the worst thing that we can do in situations like that is forget the fact that we have the courage to dare. If we don't have that courage to dare in the middle and in the face of situations like this, okay, we pretty much are dooming ourselves.
Yep.
The outcome is known. Paralysis, lack of action, misery, frustration, manifesting in ourselves, amplified to everybody around us. And I thank you for the serving people from the overflow of your cup, and not just from your cup. Because if your cup is not overflowing, you may actually take a moment and wonder whether you should be sharing with anybody. Because
absolutely right. Yep. What's inside is for you. Well, thank you so much. It's great. And I can't wait to do Shut Up, Have Fun, work with that. You can tell it's going to be interesting.
Oh, we're going to out. Okay. So we'll end this show with telling people that Dr. Deena Brown is going to be doing a show over the summer. I'm not going to give it away yet, but because we'll do a little teaser on that. But for Golden Seal Productions, my production company, I can't wait to do that. That's going to be a blast.
Yes.
All right. Thanks, my friend.
Thank you. Have a great one.
You as well.
Bye-bye.